Hey guys, welcome to Art with Addie. I'm Addie and this is where you learn how to paint. Welcome back everybody. This week we are going to be painting a coaster. Stopped off on the side of the road on my way home from work to capture this beautiful picture because I mean just look at it, it's so pretty. You cannot like beat an Arizona sunset. Going with a little bit of an Arizona theme this week, as you can tell by my shirt, the cacti that I am wearing. There's not a single cactus in this painting, I'm just gonna tell you right now. There's a sunset, cotton field. You might be wondering, why is Addie so pale if she lives in Arizona? Cause it be hot. Nobody goes outside in Arizona unless you maybe have a pool. Even then, like it's lukewarm water. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to like this video, drop me a comment, and be sure to subscribe to this Art with Addie YouTube channel so you can get notifications every Tuesday when I drop a new video. Alright, the first thing you're going to need is to get a wooden coaster. I found a 6-pack at my local thrift shop. You could probably find some there. Acrylic paints, black, white, red, yellow, and blue are the minimum colors you will need. You can mix any colors from those. If you have additional colors, even better. Paintbrushes, acrylic specific would be great, or multi-purpose also works. Cup of water, paper towels, a palette for paint. I just put some wax paper and taped it to the back of the cutting board. Additionally, you can get paint mixing sticks to save paint over time, and also something to seal the project at the end, such as Mod Podge. Here's a look at what the coaster I found looks like. I know you typically put your drink on the other side of this coaster, but we need a flat surface, so I'm using the back side of it. The first color that we're gonna go with is brown. If you don't have a pre-mixed tube of brown, you can mix red, blue, and yellow together until you get the shade that you need. I am starting with a smaller, flat, squared off brush, and we're gonna start by making the horizon line going across the entire coaster. I have some tiny little grains in going through the wood, so I'm just using those as a guideline. This line definitely does not need to be perfect. We're going to be putting some mountains on the top as like a silhouette, so even if it's a little crooked or curvy, that'll be okay. There, we're just gonna fill in everything below that horizon line with a solid brown. The wood that I am working with doesn't seem to have a coating on it, or it's been worn off over time. So the paint is kind of absorbing quickly through the wood, so the first coat will probably be pretty pale and we're gonna need to put multiple coats on. Once you've got a pretty solid and even coat of brown, we're gonna start working on the sky. The sky, as you can see in the picture on the lower left-hand corner of your screen, goes from blues at the top all the way down to yellows and oranges at the bottom of the skyline. So we're going to start with an even coating of blue just to put a base coat on the wood first. Be sure to let this base coat dry for a few minutes. I know this goes in fast motion a lot, but overall this entire painting took me about just under 2 hours in real time. I can still see the wood pretty good through the blue portion of this, so I'm going to put on a second coat now. You can also take these two base colors all the way around to the edges of the coaster if you feel like you want to do that. If you want to do it with a different color, once we progress throughout the painting, you can do it with whichever color you'd like. The next color that I'm mixing here, I'm trying to go for a very dark, almost like cherry brown. We're going to use that over the brown portion. I want this color to be pretty dark because this is a sunset photo and we really want the white dots of cotton to really pop on top of this color. Whatever color you're mixing at home, it does not have to be exactly like this color. It can really be whatever you like. Just make sure that it is a very dark version of a red or purple. I'm going a step bigger with the same type of brush, so it's flat and it is squared off, but it's a little bit bigger because this brown section is pretty large. Feel free to turn the coaster, pick it up, anything you need to just to get the right angle so you can make straight across strokes here. Using the same dark purple / red color that we made, I'm going with a step down brush that we used in the very beginning. And I'm just using the flat straight edge to make these sort of triangular shapes in the background and then filling them in. I'm going mainly off of the picture. These mountains don't have to go in any particular place. There are other things in the original photograph that are like power lines and such that I'm just going to leave out so I can make this more simple. Next, I'm going to start making the blues and purples that are going to go from the top of the sky down. So I'm making right now sort of lavender color, and you can achieve that by mixing blue and red. And I'm also going to put in quite a bit of white so it's a much paler version so it turns into a lavender. I'm then taking about half of that paint that I just mixed, putting it in a separate pile and then mixing much more blue to that. And we're going to start with that blue and then blend in some of that more magenta color in with it. Again, these colors don't have to be exact, so whatever colors you mix at home will work great as long as they are staying in the blue and purple family. Alright, so I'm going back with that larger brush that we used. I'm going to start with that paler lavender color that we made, the second shade that we made, and put some strokes in at the very top. This particular paint that I have is a little thin, so I'm going to have to put multiple layers on it. If you have thick paint, one layer will probably be enough. If it's more watered down paint, you're going to need to put on a few extra layers. You want to be pretty gentle with the paintbrush at this point so you don't lift up the blue that's underneath there, and just put some light strokes across the top of the sky. I'm using the smaller brush again, and I'm just putting a very small amount of this purple on the tip of the paintbrush and just putting a very soft stroke along the left hand side of the mountains where the light would be hitting the mountain. I've had a lot of practice painting and I have a pretty steady hand. If you find it easier to use a smaller brush for this portion, please do that. Alright, we're going to stick with that same larger brush, and we're going to go with the more magenta shade and start a little bit lower than the shade that we just put in the sky, and just gently put some strokes from the left hand side over to the right side. We're going to start working with some oranges and yellows now to really capture the sunset portion of the sky. So I'm taking the orange that I already have in a tube, and I want to make a very pale version of that, so it's going to look a little peachy. If you don't have a tube of orange paint, you can mix some red with yellow and then add white to it until you get the shade that you desire. I'm sticking with that same larger brush again, and we're just gonna go just below where the last shade of magenta was and start putting in this peachy color. It's okay if you can still see some of the blue coming through the peach. We're going to be putting on multiple layers on this orange portion of the sky. While you do want to be pretty careful and get all the way to the horizon line here, and be careful not to go over the purple portion of the mountains with this orange, but keep in mind that you can always go back later and make some more of that purple and fix the mountains if you do mess it up just a little bit. I am going in again with a very small detail brush and just dabbing a few very small dots right along the left-hand side of those mountains where we put that shade of blue earlier. I'm going to put in another layer of that peachy color into the sky just over what we've already done, just to make it stand out a bit more and so we can see less of the blue. I'm choosing a small but rounded brush so it's a little bit easier to get around those mountains. Next, I am sticking with the same brush, but we're going to go in with the brighter and darker orange right along the horizon line. I am leaving a spot on the lower left-hand side of the horizon for where the sun's going to go, because we're going to fill that in with white and then bright yellow around that. We're going to need to put in a few coats of this bright yellow and white in the center for where the sun goes, because you can see through that paint pretty well. I am blending that yellow just into that orange just a little bit, just to give it a softer appearance in the sky. While the sky is drying, before we put another coat on the sky, I'm going to move back down to the bottom half of this, and I'm going to go with a very dark brown with trying to get just a slight orange tinge to it. So I'm mixing the brown that I already have with a little bit of black and a bit of orange. This color is going to be going on top of the dark purple that we have on the bottom, and we're going to make it just below the horizon line, as it's going to show the orange sunlight coming across the cotton field. I am using a smaller, fluffier, rounded brush for this portion because I still want to be able to see the dark purple coming through this brown shade that we just made just a little bit. So I'm taking that same reddish brown that we were just working with, I'm putting a little to the side and then adding quite a bit more orange to that. And then I'm going to use the same brush that we were just using and make some very light strokes just right below where the sun will be popping over that horizon. Here I'm using the same color that we just last used, but I'm using the finest tip paintbrush that I have and just putting some very small dots on that left hand side of those mountains on the horizon again. Now that the sky has dried quite a bit, I'm going to go in with that fine tip brush and just go right along the horizon line to fill in any like tiny blue spots that shouldn't be there. From there, I am using that longer, more rounded brush that is still fairly small and just going back over that bright orange because I could still see the blue coming through it a little bit. Here I'm going to use a fairly small rounded brush to use plain white and get the very center of where the sunlight is coming from and just making a circle. We're going to need to put a few layers on this to cover up any colors that might be showing through underneath. Alright, we're getting to the most time-consuming and tedious sort of part of this painting. So we're going to use the smallest, finest tip paintbrush that you have, and we're still using just plain white, and we're going to be using what is called a stippling technique. So that is just using paint on the very tip of your brush, not just dunking it in there, just a little bit on the end, and making dots in a pattern to where it just kind of looks like there's a texture, you know. In the very far background, we're going to start with very small dots very close together, and as we move down to the bottom of the painting, we are going to start using larger brushes so we can get larger dots, but those dots will be further apart once we get down to the bottom. So what I'm doing here is starting from the left hand side, and we're going just a little bit below where that horizon line is, and drawing a line with the dots going straight across, and then we're going to kind of make maybe like 2 to 4 dots deep of rows going across, and each row that we go across we're going to move up to a larger size brush and then make those dots further apart. Please be patient with yourself at this time. Since we're working with very small details, it is going to take some time. This portion probably took me about 30 minutes. Just remember that the dots don't have to be, you know, these perfect little circles or anything, just as long as they're not totally bleeding into one another and you can kind of see the dots are separate little circles. I just wanted to take a second during this fast motion portion, since it's going to be a little while till we get to the end, just to remind everybody to please like this video, leave me a comment, and subscribe to the Art with Addie YouTube channel so you can get notifications every single Tuesday when I come out with a new video. Once you get down to this bottom portion where the cotton is like further apart from one another, you don't have to make it exactly the way that I made it. If you want to put more white dots in there or less, make them further apart, it's totally up to you. For a few of these very close up parts of the cotton, I am using more of the side of my brush rather than the very tip of my brush, and kind of just making almost like a heart shape. Next, I'm going back with that darker reddish brown that we mixed up earlier to use along the top of that horizon line. If you don't have any left, you could just mix up a new color. It doesn't have to be the exact same shade. I'm just drawing some straight lines from just a few of these cotton balls and just drawing it straight from the top down towards the bottom as stems. I'm not putting them on every single one, and you don't have to do that either. The next thing that we're going to do is mix a very dark deep green, and then we're going to make just a few little dabs with a very fine brush along some portions of the horizon line, and this is just where there's some greenery going on along the horizon, and you can really make this wherever you wish it to be. Some of these white spots at the bottom portion of the painting, I can still see through them a little bit, so I'm just doing an extra little dab on a few of these. Now would be the time to put any last minute touches on your project, including going over any colors that you could still see through, like the white or the very light yellow portions of where the sun is, or any parts of those white dots where the cotton lays. Alright, the last thing that you're going to want to do after your project has completely dried, you're going to need to put a sealant on it, such as Mod Podge. If you want your project to be waterproof so you can actually use these coasters, make sure to do this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to like this video, drop me a comment, let me know what you want to see next time, and be sure to subscribe to my channel. Click on my face right here. Just boop. Subscribe. Although this week has been fairly cool, but it's just like one of those things that Arizona likes to do that's like, hey, you wanna know what fall feels like? It's like this, but we're gonna take it back from you. You don't actually get one.